This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. I am here with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. John Jantsch of duct tape marketing fame. I'm going to rename the fame. I think the fame is really all about the self-reliant entrepreneur. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me, David.
So this book is such a departure, and it is so cool and so amazing. Just for folks that don't know, first of all, you need to know, you need to go buy a copy of this thing right now, The Self-Reliant Entrepreneur. It is a 365-day journey through entrepreneurial reflection, mindset, introspection, self-examination. I look at it as rocket fuel for any entrepreneur, any business owner, whether you've been at this for a month, a year, a decade, or 3 decades. This is the juice that will get you going and keep you going. How did you come to write this book that is so different from all your other marketing books and all your other brilliance that you've published before?
Well, I tell people that ask me how long it took to write. I tell people 30 years. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I wanted to do something that was kind of my own reflection of my 30 years of being an entrepreneur, but also how many of us have that stack of books on the corner of the desk that we mean to get around to reading. And so I also wanted to format it as something that was, hey, you're not going to pick this book up, read it cover to cover, go, oh, I got it now, figured it out. I mean, it's a daily practice. You come back to it, as you said, 365. I actually threw leap year in there. So for anybody that's born February 29th on a leap year, I didn't want them to miss a day. But you come back to it every morning maybe, and you make a little progress. I think that's the reality is that's how we improve, is not by taking a course or jumping into something. It's just daily practice. And so I wanted to write a book that kind of combined those two things.
And this was just a tremendous amount of work. So I have to ask you, because you're quoting all kinds of literary greats. And as I was starting to read the book, and especially your forward to the book, it was like, is John secretly like a liberal arts geek? Was he an English major in college? Is all this bubbling up now? So what is your background with this? Because you have some very deep knowledge of some of these writers and some of these literary movements that you're pulling from.
Yeah, political science was actually the degree. So there's somewhat liberal arts in there, but I've always really been a fan of good literature. A lot of entrepreneurs are familiar with Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau. I mean, those two get bantied around in Pinterest boards and quotes and things all the time. So I wanted to start with something to kind of anchor this book with something that was kind of age-old wisdom. If you think about what was going on in the period when most of that was written in the mid-19th century, I mean, we were on the cusp of the Civil War. Women were marching to get the right to vote. We were trying to abolish slavery. It was really the first true countercultural period in America. And the writing of the time reflected it. Self-Reliance, Walden, Civil Disobedience, those books were overtly saying, hey, we need to start thinking for ourselves. And you don't have to listen to the preacher or the politician or your parents even. You need to follow your own truth. But as I dug in a little deeper, even the fiction, I think, that was written at the time, Scarlet Letter, Moby Dick, even the work of Mark Twain, the protagonists in those works of fiction that we were all asked to read in high school and college, it was kind of the first time they were very much, hey, you got this. You got to follow your own path, even if it means a lot of pain for you. And that was a new sort of literary device, I think, in American literature. But I think today it's still some of the best writing and encouragement for the entrepreneur. So I did mine hundreds of works from that very kind of narrow 30, 40, 50-year period and used it to kind of anchor all of the thoughts that I wanted to share and contextualize on a day-to-day basis.
That is really great. I want to kind of zoom out to the planetary level and just draw the professional John Jantsch journey that brought us to where we are. And I want to just kind of have you riff on this for a little bit based on the following quote that my buddy Sally Hogshead says, that writing a book is like moving an aircraft carrier, in that once you do that, everything else goes with it. All the battleships, all the supply ships, all the troop ships. So obviously, I think you're best known up until now, and it's about to change, but you're best known for duct tape marketing. And you did coaching and consulting, and you built this beautiful certified consultant network around that. And then things moved on. Take us back to when you first published Duct Tape Marketing. I think it started as a blog, correct?
Well, it did actually. In fact, it started even, less known than that, I suppose. So really about 5 years out of college, I can tell you the whole story. About 5 years out of college, I went to work for an ad agency, and I decided, hey, I can do this myself. I don't need to work for somebody. And so I went out and hustled work. And after a few years, realized I loved working with small business owners, but they were pretty tough to work with because they didn't have money or attention spans, which you need both of sometimes to move anything. And so I said, well, if I'm going to work with small business owners, I have to be able to walk in and say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results you hope to get. By the way, here's what it costs. Do you want it? And lo and behold, in kind of trying to solve my frustration, I tapped into what I'm sure you see this too, David, what is still today one of the greatest frustrations for small business owners is buying marketing services is really hard because there's so many people selling a piece of the puzzle. And so that idea that somebody was going to be your marketing department, you knew what the cost was going to be, you knew what they were going to do, was really appealing. But I also decided I had to kind of productize it. And so I called it duct tape marketing for whatever reason. No research involved at all. Just one day decided that would be a good name. Well, the name stuck, pun intended. I started writing and I started putting that name on everything. And then ultimately it became, a blog with a podcast and then a book and then a network, as you said, of marketing consultants. If I'm being truthful, it was originally kind of a packaged product to begin with that, the response I got to the name kind of told me I should put that on everything. And so I did.
There you go. Simple, practical, and sticky.
That's right.
That's what duct tape is. So after that, was it duct tape selling or was it referral engine first?
Referral engine was first. It was a couple years after duct tape marketing and still continues to, that topic is evergreen. And there's, no amount of new social media platforms really changes the idea that you have to be referable and you have to amplify your referability. So that concept at least continues to do quite well.
And then we moved into the sales world. Now, let's talk about how these different publishing adventures impacted the rest of your business. So obviously you're doing some speaking, you're doing some consulting, you're doing maybe even some events. I've seen you do some really cool events. Is the publishing strategy kind of tied to where John wants to take the business next? Or is it a cumulative effect where you're simply adding to a portfolio and all these things are ongoing?
There is no plan, David. That's the short answer. But to a large degree, it is the latter. I mean, it's kind of building on, the resources. This new book, I don't know if it was an intention to turn the ship somehow. It was really more something I wanted to do, something I wanted to contribute. I don't know if anybody needs to hear any more from me about how to do marketing. I do continue to evolve. I mean, duct tape marketing will have a new edition out in 2020. Because as the world evolves and marketing evolves, I like to feel like we've stayed relevant and enough on the cutting edge to stay practical. This contribution of this new book was really kind of my desire to really talk about more heart-centered, more spiritual, approach to what it takes as a human being to be an entrepreneur that's making a difference. And so, I locked myself away for about a year and worked on it.
Yeah, no, really amazing. Well, let's give people a taste. I've got just a couple of favorites. I mean, again, it's really hard to pick because there's 366 awesome, amazing pieces of wisdom. But I think the other lesson I think people need to know from this, John, is depending on where you are, if you do take it as a daily devotional, when you circle back on this next year, the ones that meant nothing to you last year, suddenly those are the ones oh, did John add a page in this book? This wasn't in here last year. Yes, it was, but it wasn't for you at that time, or it wasn't resonating with you at that time.
Such a great and valid point. I say that all the time. There are a handful of books that I have read maybe a dozen times, and I make that same remark all the time because, what we forget sometimes is we're a different person in a year, and especially if you go to working on yourself, you're going to be a different person. And it's, it happens, I think, for a lot of people so gradually that maybe we don't witness it, but no question. That's why this book here's my sneaky sales pitch. This book will never go out of fashion. Some of the writing in it's already 150 years old, right?
Right.
It's not like you read it one year and go, well, where's the 2020 version? It's year after year. I think you can continue to read this book.
These are genuinely timeless classics. Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. Well, some of my favorites, I just want to tease people, then I'll give you a specific page number if you wouldn't mind reading.
Sure.
And then certainly if you have some favorites, we'd love to hear those. I love Make Enough Noise. I'm going to ask you to read Make Enough Noise on page 135. But just to give people a flavor of what these little daily devotional sound bites are, I also love Sufficient Foreground. Sufficient Foreground is so critical. It comes from the world of art. But man, oh man, none of us have sufficient foreground, right? We always say, I'm too close to my business. I'm too close to my stuff. I can't see what's really going on. And then, of course, define success and define what it looks like when you get there and what will you do when you get there. And then the fourth one that just jumped out at me is a sense of newness, especially if like me, like John, like a lot of our clients, you've been doing what you're doing for 20, 30, 35 years. It might start to feel like a grind and you lose that sense of wonder and energy and optimism. But let's start with Make Enough Noise. I just love that one so much.
So that happens to be May 8th, as the book is laid out. Every day has a title, as you've been sharing. Then there is some reading from some work of literature. Some you'll recognize, some you may not. Then, depending upon the day, maybe 75 to max of 200 words of me contextualizing it. And then the part a lot of people really like is a challenge question. So every day has a question for you to answer. And I think if the book's successful at all, that question will get planted like a seed in your brain every day. And you'll take it and you'll start seeing it as a centering thought showing up in the day. And I think that's always the first step to improving something is to actually witness it. A lot of times we have a lot of things we're trying to improve. We don't realize how we respond or how we have a conversation, that maybe is not so positive until we start seeing those. We can't make improvement. All right, May 8th, make enough noise. Beat drums, blow bugles, blow. Make no parley, stop for no expostulation. Mind not the timid. Mind the weeper or prayer. Mind not the old man beseeching the young man. Let not child's voice be heard, nor the mother's entreaties. Make even the trestles to shake the dead where they lie, awaiting the hearses. So strong you thump, O terrible drums, so loud you bugles blow. That's from a poem by Walt Whitman, Beat Drums, 1861. Whitman's dramatic poem was a visual and auditory warning meant to describe the perils of the impending American Civil War. He encourages those who would listen to carry out a mission to wake those who must wake, must heed the warning to never stop, never mind the pile of obstacles and excuses in your way. While perhaps a tad overdramatic for our entrepreneurial journey, the commitment needed mirrors the type of single-minded determination extolled by the poet. Make enough noise to silence your critics. Your challenge question today: when was the last time someone told you that you couldn't do something? How did you react?
Imagine getting a dose of that every morning, 366 different ones. So good.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a dumb question. I'm sure every other interview you've had to answer this. Do you have a favorite or a couple favorites yourself?
I do get asked that. And to tell you the truth, I've been actually leaning pretty heavily on January 1st.
Ooh, let's hear that one.
So Thoreau's Walden is one of those few books that I actually read in high school because I liked it, not because it was going to be on the test. January 1st, the force of nature. Why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed and in such desperate enterprises? If a person does not keep pace with their companions, perhaps it is because they hear a different drummer. Let them step to the music which they hear, however measured or far away. It is not important that you should mature as soon as an apple tree or an oak. Shall you turn your spring into summer? Henry David Thoreau, Walden, 1854. Nature has no desire to succeed. One season inevitably folds into the next. a year marked by change in weather, ecology, and daylight, no matter how much force we might exert to contain it. If we attempted to mimic nature, one thing is for sure, we would release the need to control any aspect of our lives. We would give in to what naturally needs to happen. This is a fundamental element of self-reliance. And ironically, by releasing the need to control, we eventually find that we gain access to greater control. Think about the last time you forced or tried to force something to happen. How did that feel? How did it turn out? If you succeeded, did the result last? Now think about the last time something came into your life by way of what felt like luck. Isn't it possible that your lack of control actually created what you characterized as luck? Your letting go created your fate. Today, and as you journey through this book, consider the many things on the path that worked out well for you, even though you didn't or couldn't control them. Listen closely for this tone, for it is your beat, the beat of your different drummer. Your challenge question today: can you describe a time you benefited from luck? What does luck feel like?
Wow, really, really powerful. The whole difference between striving and struggling versus just ease and mastery and letting go. It's like skiing. Are you a big skier?
I am a skier.
So there's a saying, of course, in skiing about you have to let go to go faster.
Yep.
You can't be like clutching the poles and being all tense and nervous, because then you're going to be skipping down the mountain very slowly and roughly.
And a lot of it comes really from trust, self-trust. But unfortunately, and I get this, that self-trust sometimes takes some experience. You need to actually win a few times. You need to actually say, oh, you know what? I decided to let go today, and a better result actually happened. Because, when it really comes down to it, I think most of our energy and stress is based, as an entrepreneur, around trying to control things we can't control. We can't control what other people think, what they say. We can maybe try to influence what they do, but we're not in control. And really the only thing that we're in control of, I think, is, how we show up and how we respond to everything that happens all day long. And if we, I think, can realize that that's, our job, I think we're going to release a lot of stress. And I think that the ride that we're on is going to be a lot more joyful.
Yeah. Wow. How about that? I want to ask you a little bit kind of behind the scenes, kind of publishing insider secrets. Can we go there?
You betcha.
Okay. So in the forward to this book, you acknowledge a mutual friend of ours, Jay Baer, and you said that I think Jay Baer will recognize his thumbprint throughout this book. Because once we are in this publishing world and thought leadership world, we do have the opportunity to develop some really cool, fun friendships. How did Jay help you? What was that secret advice that he gave you when you're writing this book?
Well, before I answer that, you're absolutely right about the friendships and relationships. And Hawthorne and Emerson and Thoreau and Louisa May Alcott were all great friends. I tapped into their journals and, their letters back and forth to each other. None of them had emojis in them like ours do today, but nonetheless, they had that same kind of community. So it's no surprise, really, that I think a lot of us have developed those relationships too. I sent out some early drafts. How authors are. It's like, am I crazy? Will somebody tell me to not do this? If I shouldn't be doing this? And Jay gave some great feedback. And one of the things that two things actually, I take that back, that he suggested is each month begins with a little bit of a history of some of the more significant authors that I quote. So we use that as divider pages. And so that was one of his suggestions. And then also, as I was writing these, I was kind of ending them with, today, think about this, or today, do this. And he said, why don't you ask a direct question at the end? And so that challenge question that now is on every page was a suggestion by Jay. So I've been giving him credit all over the place.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And he's a real sweetheart of a guy too.
He is.
He's been on this show, I think, either 2 or 3 times, and he's just he's a perennial hit. I want to talk about the publishing strategy, because obviously you probably went to your literary agent, you went to Wiley, you say, guys, I have an idea. And they're like, oh, this is great. This is John Janch. This is the best-selling marketing guy, sales guy, referral guy. What do you got for us, buddy? And then you pitch this. How was that received? How were you able to get them to kind of fully get behind you in this very different kind of book and very different kind of publishing adventure?
Well, I had a little help. It didn't go exactly like you explained. My literary agent is a gentleman by the name of Stephen Hanselman. And he was a publisher at Harper, years ago, and he purchased and helped curate a book called The Daily Drucker. Some of your listeners may be familiar with, and it was essentially a daily 366 days compilation of Peter Drucker's work. It was actually curated by somebody else, but because I think Drucker was dead at the time already. But so he'd always had that in his mind, and so he has been after me to write this book for a while. So it was really his suggestion. He also 3 years ago, so that's he's been on me since that period. 3 years ago, he also represents Ryan Holiday, and he went to Ryan Holiday and said, "You need to write the Daily Stoic. I'll write it with you." And so he had a great track record of this daily kind of book. So believe it or not, pitching it to potential publishers was really, to a large degree, was based on the success of his other works in the genre, or I'm not sure if this is a genre or if this is a format or what we would call it, but that certainly helped.
Yeah, no, that's really, really exciting. So this was more of a pull. You were pulled into this.
There's a lot of truth to that. Obviously, I wrote all the words. I wanted to write this. I did want the structure of what texts I was going to dip into. Once I discovered the transcendentalists and that mid-19th century period of literature, the book really came together pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, very exciting. What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Well, I want to find out what's the game plan. What's next? Is there going to be a Self-Reliant Entrepreneur card deck? Is there going to be a conference? Can we come to an event? Is there going to be boot camps? What's going on?
So that's a great question. I did not, just because this is how I run my life, I guess, for good or bad. I don't have a grand plan of like, I'm going to write the book because it's going to produce this, this, and this. I like to get sort of pulled into things. I've done a keynote around this topic, which, as you might imagine, is very different than what I've done previously. It is meant to be purely inspirational in nature, and I've really enjoyed that. And I do believe that this book will take me into some of those opportunities. I've been hearing from a lot of folks that actually want to use the book as a facilitation guide with, say, a team or a group of clients, or more of a book club that would kind of never end, kind of thing. So I think there are some folks that want some resources around that. And I do have a Facebook group just called Daily Self-Reliance that we're discussing the topics. It's really interesting. One thing about this book, and it's kind of ironic, to write a book about teaching you to be self-reliant, because the self part's on you. And one of the things that's been kind of interesting is, I interpret the quotes, I give my context, I, give the question, I have my idea of what those all mean. It's amazing how they mean totally different things to different readers. And that's really been kind of fun to hear other people's perspectives. So this is one of those books that, we do so much in companies and with our clients as, talking about metrics and, priorities for the next quarter and whatnot. I think this is one of those books that could also be kind of added to the mix of saying, let's talk about some of the deep stuff we don't talk about, the meaningful stuff that we never get around to because we don't have maybe a guide to do that.
Again, to reinforce that message, we don't probably talk enough about heart.
Yeah.
In business and soul. But however, the word soul is in the subtitle of this book, right? So it's 366 daily meditations to feed your soul and grow your business. Once you've been at this game for a little bit, you realize you can't do one without the other. If you're not feeding your soul, you're not growing any kind of business. You're going to be out of business or working at Starbucks.
Yeah. I feel like there's so much information out there about how to do everything that we need to do. We don't need more of that, frankly, but there's probably not enough resources for, why to do stuff or how to get our mindset in the right place so that all this stuff, all the great books that you write, are going to make a difference.
No, for sure. And it's funny, one of my early mentors, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, he said to me, David, stop asking how. How is the least interesting question? And I was like, no, but I'm Mr. I got to, the steps, 7 strategies, 15 steps, 11 principles, blah, blah, blah. Dude, it's not about that. Those are interesting, but there's a lot more deeper, meaningful, foundational questions that we should be asking ourselves. And that's the other thing, of course, is that sometimes the question is more important than the reading or the analysis.
Yeah.
So they'll read the passage, they'll read the John Jansch kind of play-by-play. That question, though, man, that hits them right between the eyes. Right question, right day, right mindset, and it opens up a whole new world for them.
Some of the questions are, and then none of them are throwaways, but some of them might feel easy. Some of them you're going to go, wow, I have no idea how to answer that, and maybe I should. And that's when you're going to take that with you throughout the day, and stuff's going to start showing up that helps you answer that question because you've planted that seed.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you just about sort of workload, bandwidth, because I know that this book is out. And of course, the whole duct tape marketing empire is ongoing. You've got a beautiful testimonial to your amazing team at the beginning of the book that kept the home fires burning and the duct tape empire running while you were gone. How do you balance these multiple entrepreneurial ventures? You've got the publishing, you've got your consultant network to take care of, and that content, and that series of events. How do you just distribute that so you don't pull yourself in 17 different directions?
Well, I mean, one of the keys is I do have good people that are, very much tasked with doing specific elements. I mean, I get in the way, more often than I should sometimes. But, when I'm truly doing the right work, I'm doing things like writing and speaking and, interviewing people on my podcast and helping us kind of set direction for, maximizing assets that we have built. I don't do as much of the day-to-day. There's no question about that. I mean, we have I've got people that have been with me for a long time, and we've worked into certainly a pretty good routine. Having said that, you launched books before. It's the last couple months have knocked me a little bit off my routine and game because and I think this book more than others, mainly because this book is so personal. I mean, people who know me well will read this and go, wow, that's him sharing, a bit of itself. Some of the advice I give, and I tried very hard not to. In fact, I intentionally wrote the book in first person plural. There's no, I think you should do this. It is, I'm a member of the audience. And I think we, typically fall into this trap. But there definitely are days that, maybe my wife could identify them more than anyone else, where I'm basically telling on myself. For things that I need to work on or things that I've struggled with. It made for a much more personal experience putting it out there in the world for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Well, another one of our mutual friends, Mark Levy, forwarded me an email, and I think this was towards the end of your big promotional campaign. And you said something which is very humble and very charming. You said, if you have any energy left to help me promote this book, would you please, and I think you sent this to your network or to your friend group, it does seem like we do an awful lot of asking during these book launches. But I think people need to understand that we've built up so much, if we've done the rest of our work and life correctly, we've built up so much goodwill that most people do want to help.
That's right.
And if we don't ask and re-ask and keep asking, I mean, I remember early on in my career, not with publishing, but with everything, people would ask me, well, David, how can I support you? How can I help you? My answer was always, oh, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I wasn't good. I wasn't fine. I needed the help. But pride gets in the way. We have to swallow that when we're doing God's work because it needs to be spread. It needs to be shared. How did you handle that asking campaign? Did you do a big pre-launch, the main launch? Kind of what's the evergreen?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is a book that should sell for years, not just the month it comes out. So I didn't try to make, everything has to be, on this date. I mean, we're doing this recording, a month or so after the book is out. And, this is a great holiday book, for example. So, I mean, to me, this is just kind of a slow, I'll use your term, a slow burn, as opposed to, the big giant launch, so to speak. And if it has legs at all, it will actually sell perhaps more in its second year and its third year than it does in its first year if people truly find value in using it, because that's who will spread the word about it. In terms of the asking people too, I was the same way. I mean, I really like to think of myself as, I can do this. I don't need any help. But one of the things I think you realize at some point is that people actually like to help. People actually like to be asked to help. Now, there's a point at which you become obnoxious and, that you can be overboard. But I think sometimes by not allowing people, I mean, it's a goofy example. People come over to your house and eat dinner, they want to help do the dishes, but we always want to go, oh, no, we got it. You just enjoy yourself. But they'd actually enjoy themselves more if they felt like they were contributing. So I think you have to realize that, the same true of, we talked about one of my books, The Referral Engine. A lot of times people are afraid to ask for referrals, but people actually enjoy doing that. They enjoy being known as somebody who knows people who can help. And so, I think sometimes you shut that flow of energy off by not actually allowing them to help.
Yeah, boy, what a great insight. You have to get in the flow of giving and receiving.
That's right.
And part of that is receiving. Well, I'm going to ask you two final questions here, John, as we wrap up. And this has been so fantastic, so valuable. The final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected for John Jantsch Brilliance, and specifically the Self-Reliant Entrepreneur resources, assets, book club, Facebook group, all those things. We're going to link those up in the show notes. But even before we get to that, this whole concept of the self-reliant entrepreneur and daily motivation and staying in the game, even through the hard parts, what would be one central concept from our conversation today that you hope people would really remember and take with them?
Based on our conversation today, I'm going to change it. To me, I think what has helped me through the years is that I'm extremely curious. In fact, sometimes I get bored with things pretty easily. And so one of the things that I've always done is pushed myself to experience new things, to go to places that maybe I'm a little nervous to go to eat foods that seem like I'm not going to like them, to read books that have nothing to do with business. I mean, I love a good fiction book, but I also read books about architecture and math, because I think that there's something about the way my brain is wired. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we pick up so much more in terms of patterns and systems and things that are going to serve us in our everyday life and our everyday work from other places, from experiencing and broadening our horizons. So I'd give you that advice if you were 20, or, if you're 50, I think it works.
Brilliant. Now, how do people get connected and stay connected if they want more John Jantsch, more resources, more book goodies, all of that stuff? Under this episode at thespeakingshow.com, we're going to link all of this up. John, what do you want to give people?
So the easiest way to find out pretty much everything on the book itself. Well, first off, the book's available, anywhere you buy books. And, I always like to put a plug in for that local corner bookstore. If you've still got one of those in your town, you can get it there as easily as anywhere else. But if you want to find more resources and goodies, as David talks about, SelfReliantEntrepreneur.com will take you to a couple pages that are dedicated to the book itself. But then you can also find out pretty much everything I've been doing for the last 30 years at ducttapemarketing.com. And that's DUCTTAPE marketing.com.
Awesome. John Jantsch, pleasure as always. We have to have you back just to keep up with your ongoing adventures.
You bet. I would love to. And of course, I know you have a book coming out in 2020, and I look forward to having you on my show to talk about Do It Speaking.
Thank you. It should be even more fun. Thank you. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.